Maybe they did the whole eat that frog approach.
Go ahead.
I shouldn't have to say any more. Everybody should know that book.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 401 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs. Joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good afternoon, Donna.
Good afternoon, David Sims.
Man, we keep doing any more episodes, I'm going to lose count of the numbers. Just so many.
Oh, well, that's why, that's why we have to put it on our notes where it is. So we can't keep up.
Yeah, one of these days we'll hit 4 figures.
No, we're not. We're not.
Episode 1000. Yeah.
You committing me to 10 more years? No.
No, we're just going to do more recordings.
Do them daily. No.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, I think neither one of us would survive that. And it would be external sources encouraging it. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
We're not going to say who.
I've already got the name for it. It's Your Daily Dose of Donna and David. Say that fast.
Y-D-D-D-D. Y-D.
Yeah, why indeed.
Why indeed. Quad D. Oh, boy, that's a rabbit hole we should not go down right now. We should do it when it's just the two of us.
Mm-hmm. All right. So today we're going to be talking about something else that's kind of hard to do. This is mobile device security.
Hey.
Yeah, we got a checklist. So for all you checklist manifestos out there, you want to do that, we have that. And we'll go over it bit by bit, as they would say in the IT world. All right. But before we get into that, we do want to thank those of you who help us stay on the air and donate to the cause and, help us be the superheroes that we are. Thank you very much. And for those who leave us a review, we appreciate it because we love knowing what you think about us, or at least what you will publicly say about us. All righty. Here we go. Let's do a HIPAA Say What. You want to do that? We hadn't done one in a little while.
Well, we've been a little busy.
Yes, we have.
And in a hurry. So, yeah, we had an interesting, it was kind of a conversation recently. So for our HIPAA Say What? I really wish I'd get that done.
Just watching you do that is funny.
I know, it's hard work for me to get my voice to do that.
It's like you have to move your whole body in a certain direction to get that.
Just push it up. Okay. The question is, when is it okay to allow a new BA or new employees to have access to use or disclose PHI?
Great question.
Never. Don't let them.
Yeah.
But no, so here's the thing. And I did try to find it, but we have too many episodes. I couldn't find it. And David just is not helpful with these sort of things, people. So there have been multiple corrective action plans that OCR has published that touch on a variety of these topics. When it comes to a BA, though, that one's pretty easy. They should not have access to use or disclose PHI until there's a BAA in place. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Done. That one's easy.
You might want to even make sure they even understand what they signed.
You need to vet them, not just get it in place after some of the things, that we know really happen when you start asking questions.
Yeah. So, Donna, what should come first, the vetting or the signature?
Yeah, I say the vetting. Because the signature could, you want to hold that signature until you get some vetting done. That's your leverage. Then you have your documentation, so when you sign. But I digress. We move on to the new employee piece. And there's several layers of complexity involved here. If it's somebody who's worked in healthcare forever, and people are like, look, I know they know HIPAA privacy and security, they've worked in healthcare forever. Your training is supposed to train them on your privacy and security policies, not just HIPAA privacy and security concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not training them on yours, and you're assuming that other people have the same policies and procedures, well, you could see how things get out of hand quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I know years ago, OCR had one that said, you could go no later than 15 days from the day to hire that they had to have their HIPAA training. But as I recall, that one didn't specifically say, I think they were kind of looking at it as there's going to be so much training that they're going to be involved in the first 15 days that, they're probably not going to be left to their own devices kind of approach. But I also know that was very long ago. It feels like long ago. It was hundreds of episodes ago. But then there have been some others that say if they have not had HIPAA training, you don't give them access, period. I could make an argument maybe that you don't have to do it day one, depending on the job. But if you're going to sit somebody down and have them work with a patient day one in their training, they're meeting the individual. Mm-hmm. It's not like you can say, oh, they wouldn't run into each other at the grocery store and recognize one another potentially. And if they don't know that they shouldn't recognize them and say, remember me from Dr. So-and-so's office? You know what I'm saying?
How's that rash, Donna?
Is it still itching like you said? Because that was funny what you said. Because you never know. And so if you've got somebody that's interacting with patients, absolutely should not do it until they've had proper training on your policies and procedures. Because you're just trusting them to truly know. That's a lot of trust in today's world. Unless they came from somebody else that and you know their program, which is not often something that happens. So I would say, depending upon the job, you could go out a few days. If you're going to have them go through, you get a new employee and all the stuff they got to go through, especially the larger organizations. The smaller ones, no. I mean, post haste. Because how are they going to be able to be around everything without exposure to patients?
Right.
So I definitely wouldn't let them have exposure to patients. They may see stuff on the screen when they're being trained, but no, nada. That's all I have to say about that.
All right. Easy enough. Let's dive into our mobile device security checklist because HC3 rolled out a report which included a checklist of recommendations.
Yeah, the HPH mobile device security checklist. Because, it's riveting information.
Yep. And HPH is not HIPAA, public HIPAA.
No, HPH is healthcare public health. Healthcare public health sector. That's what we're talking about when we see HPH. Right, David?
Mm-hmm.
So it is all about HPH. It's telling those in the health sector, and this comes from the Health Sector Cybersecurity Coordination Center, which is part of the Office of Information Security in HHS.
Ooh.
I know, right? So what are you going to do? Anyway, it's pretty straightforward, but the minute you and I started reading it, we were like, our first impressions were exactly the same, and we're like, yeah, we need to record it. Let's just go with it.
Yep.
So we're off.
Here we go. So the list is probably a little bit overwhelming to most folks, especially when you start to read it and they start talking about some of the things that, you know, if you're not tech savvy, you may not understand them, and we're gonna cover it. But the first one, like, why did you make this first on the list?
Mm-hmm.
So the first recommendation is controlling wireless broadcasts. Mobile devices can leverage various wireless communication protocols, such as 802.11, Bluetooth, and broadband cellular, currently 5th generation. These capabilities should be disabled, and connection specifics should be deleted when not needed. Now,
so that's their first entry, which they actually have a sentence in the opening that says, this document represents a basic checklist of recommended items for health sector mobile devices to maintain security.
Yeah. So right away, I'm like, okay, so as long as it can't connect to the internet, it's secure.
Which is what we always say. That's the only way to secure something.
I know. But how do you effectively do this? Like, you have to turn off Wi-Fi, turn off Bluetooth, and turn off your cellular data. In addition to that, you have to have connections that are specific, and you should delete them when not needed. So you know how you go in and have to forget the connections, which few people even know how to do.
Yep.
I'm
And just
like,
tell it
wow.
not to remember in the first. I mean, this is the okay, and we both had that. Okay, that's A, not basic. B, it creates a lot of, you need to have a lot of discussion before you just start doing it.
Yeah, well, the other piece of it is like, okay, if you've got a cloud-based EHR that you're using the mobile device to access, then you can't access it if you're turning all this stuff off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with you. If you want to secure it, this is the best way to do it. Number one, bam.
Oh, yeah.
Turn everything off.
And turning off the Bluetooth and all of that. Well, I'm walking around with all these Bluetooth connected things already.
Yeah.
So I've got to turn all that off. My ability to record things, or my watch to tell me things, they're connected, Bluetooth. I mean, there's layers and layers. That's not something you just start doing. So they start with something complicated in the basic document.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just not, most people are already going to toss that aside, because now that makes a mobile device useless to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a perfect example of how you have people that are highly technical that are writing these things most likely and don't understand you can't do this in a smaller environment. Or I shouldn't say can't, but it's going to be extremely difficult.
Well, there's an assumption that only technical people will be reading this and will then know what to do about it.
Yeah. But even still, in a smaller environment, heck, even in some medium-sized environments, you're talking about mobile devices, the company don't even own them. And so we get into that a lot. Like, what are you going to do? You don't own the device. You can't force these people to do certain things. And you put different software on their mobile device and they push back against that. I mean, it's a mess. I mean, mobile devices, it's just the bane of my existence in IT. It really is.
Well, and then, you got IT folks. I mean, you have every right, because you can't secure them like you can a workstation or a server. Because of all the variables that we just hit on the very first item on the checklist.
Yeah.
So the other things down in the checklist that are much more reasonable to do will probably be ignored.
I know, because they'll look at that one and go, okay, I'm out.
Yeah. Well, if they even try to stick with it a little longer, let's look at number 2.
All right. So number 2, limit connectivity, which, isn't that kind of the same? No. But anyway, device owners should be cautious about which networks they connect to. I agree, especially public and other untrusted networks. Connection to residential wireless networks should leverage the use of a VPN. Should be through access points and modems that are of reputable brands. Okay, now you've already lost everybody. And have adequate security features properly configured and updated to the latest firmware, operating system, etc. Devices should ideally only be used to connect to corporate enterprise infrastructure via an approved and properly encrypted wireless network. Okay.
First of all, it's regidental.
Is that what it is? At least I read it properly.
I know, right? Your brain works that out, but, which is just fun for me because I get to say tail. But
so this one jumped from mobile devices to enterprise network security.
Yeah, and security on home networks.
Mm-hmm.
So now I get to number 2, and I'm saying my residential network has to have, so I'm now defining what the residential networks need to have on them. Not just, they need to use a VPN and through access points and modems that meet all these requirements. So there's no way we're going to keep anybody their attention to this. I mean, you would, if I wasn't saying, David, we have to read this, you'd be like, you'd scan the first 2 and toss it aside. I'm going to wager.
Oh yeah, because I'd already say this is not reasonable. Trash.
Right. So I get why they're saying it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, in the real world, that would really be hard to implement. Those first 2.
Yeah, I have these conversations all the time with people that have the work from home folks. And they're like, well, am I supposed to have them use a business class firewall? And I'm like, it would be fantastic if you could, but I don't think you can do that.
No.
I mean, are you going to force them to buy a $1,200 firewall when they go to Walmart and they see one for $80?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen.
Well, and their ISP tells them that what they're giving them is plenty. They don't need another one.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
All right. So if you happen to make it past the first 2,
right.
The next one, application and software deployment limits. So the minimum number of applications required should be deployed to the device in order to reduce the attack surface. I fully agree. You should do that on every device.
Yes.
The fewer applications you have on any device, the less problems you're going to have because you have less risk involved.
Yes. And that is absolutely correct. But is it in a, the enterprise may choose to whitelist, blacklist applications as they see fit. Totally get it. But we've talked about whitelisting and blacklisting. I mean, it's easy to blacklist. Whitelist is a whole new ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
So again, totally agree. But if you're not doing company-owned devices, that's almost impossible to manage.
Yeah, it is very difficult. Now, they do have, which is kind of interesting, I ran into a vendor not long ago where they had it where you could do things like whitelist and blacklist, but you could set a schedule to where it only functioned from like 8 to 5.
Right. So you're going to trust them not to access work stuff.
Yes. So after 5 o'clock, they do what they want to do with it. But, okay.
Again, but then you got to make sure that all of the other systems would shut down at that same schedule.
You have to flip it. So at 5 o'clock, the whitelist becomes blacklist, the blacklist becomes whitelist.
Blah.
And then we just gray list everything.
Yeah. So again, it's not wrong. It's not bad advice, but to actually implement that in the real world, that takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So then we finally get to something that is, I think those first 3, actually getting somebody past those first 3 to say we could implement anything, that those should be the last 3.
Yeah. Maybe they did the whole eat that frog approach.
Go ahead.
I shouldn't have to say any more. Everybody should know that book.
There's so many good frog-related business stories. And look, you actually have it on there.
I know. Have it right here on my desk.
Okay. There's so many frog-related things that are so good.
I know. All right. So if you get past the first three, then the next one is easy peasy, operating system and software updates. So ensure the device has all the apps and then they're updated as soon as possible, which I can say something about that. Automatic update deployment and installation should be implemented when it does not interfere with the device operations. So
it's not unreasonable, and yes, you could debate, but most everybody's going to have a patch management policy. And if I've got any kind of user that's not technical savvy, I'm going to tell them to turn on automatic updates to everything, because they won't be able to figure out when to do it and when not to do it. And nothing gives me anxiety more than somebody asking me to help with their phone. And it's like, hasn't been updated in years and they don't want to get rid of it because it works just fine. And we don't update it because it works just fine. And I'm like, this thing is a hot potato. I don't want it in my hands.
Yeah. So updating and patching should be easy. However, we do know, as we covered in the LastPass breach, because the guy at home, who's a developer, that was using was it Plex media thing that was 70-something versions behind?
Yep. Something not up to date on the home network.
Yeah.
Is what started us down that path.
So you're tech savvy enough to set up a Plex server, but yet not security minded enough to make sure it stays updated. Does that mean there's a difference between IT and security, Donna?
I'm thinking we may need to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, maybe so. Not that we've ever talked about either of those.
We've never had the title of the show, IT and security are not the same. We've never done that. But that is something that's hard even for IT people to get. Clearly. And we've talked about it. It's like now I am always asking from the security folks, and I'll send you something. What about this? And how do we all, it's our paranoia, but there are too many people that assume they know what they're doing.
Yep. This is true.
Yeah. And then you bring down an entire worldwide global enterprise. So, and many, many people. Anyhow, yes. And then next thing, authentication, David. Authentication.
Yeah. Just give everybody the same username and password. Bam.
They don't. They make sure this one's password 1, this one's password 2, this one's password 3. And I believe in using the the new NIST guidelines that came out that we still don't have everybody fully adopting. To me, that's the way to do it. Maybe change once a year, maybe change your passwords, annually or whatever, but they have to be like 15 characters long, 12 characters long, at least. And I've taught many people, to my new password method, now that more and more places will accept this kind. There's nothing worse than a thing that is so old, you're only allowed to use an 8-character password, and they want you to use all the complexity. I'm like, why? It's not even worth it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to think about when you're doing these, though, is that when you're creating the password, let's just say my passphrase is, I love red dogs. Then you don't want the next one you do be, I love red dogs 1.
No.
I love red dogs 2.
Yeah.
Or something else where you're changing it. Like I know somebody one time that had a password and the first part of the password was always the same. And then the last part of the password was always the site they were on. So you only had to see 2 of their passwords to really go, oh, I see what they're doing here.
Yeah. I can do this.
Yeah, and now you have all their passwords.
You just try it on every one of them.
Yeah, so just don't do stuff like that. And it also talks about making sure you have screen lock capabilities turned on and enabled after a set period of time, and use multi-factor authentication. I mean, use MFA everywhere you can.
Mm-hmm. And it even says should be required as practical.
Yeah.
So having screen locks and all that kind of stuff. But the people that will argue with you, I don't need X, Y, or Z. I'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
But we know this is a discussion you have over and over and over. No problem. This falls right in line.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing, encryption.
Yeah. So encryption, and it talks about HIPAA here. HIPAA requires encryption for any device that stores or processes any of the 18 categories of PHI, which we call them the 18 identifiers. End-to-end encryption is recommended for all mobile devices. Most devices have inherent encryption capabilities. Additional encryption software can be implemented as needed. So
yeah, I mean, we agree. We wouldn't necessarily agree with exactly how that's worded.
No.
Because HIPAA requires it, then gets us into the required versus addressable and la la la. Don't want to go down that path, but absolutely something. And most mobile devices, and when we talk about mobile devices, for the most part, we're talking about tablets, phones, computers that make phone calls, also known as phones, and small laptops and those kind of things. But there are other things that are mobile devices. We're not getting on that.
Right.
We're mostly thinking, your Apple iOS and your Android. And yeah, those are the two pretty much that we're talking about.
Yep. And I think all of them have encryption capabilities now.
Yeah. The minute you set the password, I think, you're encrypted on an iOS. I don't know about the Android because there's so many flavors, but
yeah, that's true. But make sure that's turned on, and you certainly want to document that.
Yes, you should document everything.
Yeah, you should. And don't assume it stays turned on, because in some cases it might not.
Yeah, you have to then audit what you've put in place and make sure that it's in your policies and procedures. Okay, right. So moving along.
Yep. Next one, something we've also never talked about: data backup and cloud storage. Yeah. So it says data redundancy should be in practice and all sensitive information. HHS recommends a 3-2-1 rule for any healthcare organization as data backup. This applies to the most sensitive healthcare data and requires that at least 3 copies of the data be maintained. There's your 3. Stored in 2 different mediums. There's 2. With at least 1 copy stored offline. And there's 1. 3-2-1. And there's even IT people that argue with this. Like, oh, it doesn't work. 3-2-1 rule is garbage. I'm like, if you could get 1-1-1 rule, I'd be happy.
I know, right? But you also have to account that 3 copies of the data are maintained. Well, one of them is the one you're using. So then you have a second one that is a backup. There you go. And all I'm saying is back up the backup.
Yep.
So, but again, not an unusual requirement for any kind of security. Good with that.
Yep.
Totally agree. And yes, it could be debated a million times by the technical people. But again, a non-technical person trying to work with this, they wouldn't even made it this far in the document. So we're good.
Now, I will say that, all you Apple fans out there, you got iCloud, so it's a lot easier. But the Android folks, you got lots of options, which is good and bad.
Yes, both good and bad.
Yeah, maybe even more bad than good.
So well, iCloud is still something to worry about because if you're putting stuff on your iPhone and then backing it up to the iCloud, you don't have a BAA with them. And then
True.
if you have a crappy password, which Apple is pretty forceful with its two-factor, you screw up. Like when we were in Louisville, there was something I was screwing around with one night really late before the conference started, probably something to do, I don't know, with the conference. And I was tired, and I don't know what I kept doing, but I couldn't get into one of my Apple devices, and I just had to walk away. And I'm like, my security's working. It's telling me you're too tired to get past your own security. Fine.
Yeah. I've had those happen where it's like, I can't even get into my own device because of my security.
Yeah. Security's not convenient.
Yep. All right. Next one, endpoint security software. So security software should be installed as available. This includes anti-malware capabilities that can prevent viruses, spyware, and full-fledged cyber attacks.
Yep.
Okay.
I have multiple things doing that work on mine. I'm sure you do too.
What? On an Apple device? I thought it was secure.
I know,
you
right?
can't hack it. No, it's just completely impenetrable to security
I don't
issues.
hear that as much as I used to. Do you? Now that they,
I still do every so often.
I always laugh at people that say it. That means it's too easy to get into your device. But yes, endpoint security does a lot of different things, and it, there's even the stuff built in to block the calls and the SMS messages that are now doing a great job in phishing and getting people to screw up.
So the same thing on Android here. Be careful because there are lots of endpoint security products, and I'm doing air quotes here, that aren't security products. They're there to steal your information. Same thing with cloud backups and all that. You use reputable, don't use free. For goodness sake, stay away from free, but definitely use reputable software from a reputable company.
Well, their AT&T does build in security that comes with it. It's free so it's not free. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're buying it, and they've embedded some stuff from security software companies. So you don't just go and download something that's free of charge from anywhere, though. Absolutely. Right. Please do not do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then configuration management. This is going to be a fun one. Operating systems, apps, security software should all be configured for full functionality and then maximum security.
I don't know that you do it in that order.
This is exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, why wouldn't you do security first and then
and then you do full functionality to make sure your security's not shutting it down?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, you could be argued either way.
I guess maybe you do the functionality first so that if it's not working, then after you do the security, then the security did it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. You know why it's broken.
Yeah.
Because security's not convenient.
No. All right, this was interesting. Content and conversations. Users should periodically receive reminders upon login, for example, that they are handling sensitive health data on the mobile device. And it's their responsibility to protect that data while it's stored on the device, as well as when transmitting it to and from the device.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is one of those that was and I think I joked about it before when we had our 405D meeting in DC in November, and we all go to dinner together, and everybody's taking different pictures with their phones, and it's like, well, now you got to get them to each other. And I'm like, well, most of us have iPhones, so let's just airdrop it. The air was sucked out of the room, and I'm like, we can turn it on momentarily. And you hear everybody mumbling, and then they turn it on, and it's like bloop, 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 all over the place. And then everybody's, did you turn yours off? Did you remember to turn yours off? It's good stuff. But that is, that's the stuff that's on there. And all the folks who think that they can text about patient information, I'm just saying no.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go with no.
All right, I love this one. Physical security. Devices should be physically secured at all times, including at the enterprise facility, at the residence of the user, and in transit. That means like in your vehicle. Precautions should be taken by the user to ensure passwords, PHI, and other sensitive data are always secure. So, when you think about that, how many times have you seen a mobile device sitting on a dash, sitting in a seat? Somebody gets up at the local coffee shop and walks over to get their coffee and leaves their phone on the table.
Well, technically laptops fall under this mobile device, and we're not, all of these things from a laptop perspective should be in place anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But when you think about, I had a friend that he's having lunch at a restaurant and they're doing things, and he laid his iPad down to take a bite. And they were sitting right by the door, and somebody just grabbed the iPad and took off out the door. As he's eating, he didn't leave it. He just left. So, and another friend who put his laptop in a safe at a B&B he was staying at in Portugal, and he comes back, and not only did they steal the entire safe, because it wasn't bolted into the wall, but they stole his luggage to put the safe in. His luggage he came home with was quite entertaining. Anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Wow.
But yeah, the physical security, you got to realize, which is why you have to have the other things that we're talking about here.
Yep. So if we haven't talked about things that do require mobile device management, this is definitely going to hit you. So remote wiping. Mobile devices should include a remote wiping capability. Users should be required to immediately report lost or stolen devices so that data wiping can occur prior to exposure. Now, two things here. One, you have to have the ability to do the remote wiping, which means it has to be turned on, set up, configured, all that good stuff. But secondly, somebody needs to report it. How many times have you seen people come in like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I lost my phone Friday. It's like Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, I can't remote wipe if I don't know to do it.
Yeah. Or you were on vacation, so I wanted to wait for you to get back in 2 weeks and tell you my phone was stolen.
Somebody else should be covering that remote wipe when you're gone. But again, remote wipe, if you've got it properly secured in the first place, that's a little less stressful.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that a lot of times remote wiping never works because the device is not turned on, not connected. It's already been, wiped or something else where they've taken it apart or whatever. So very seldom when I've had to use this, very seldom has it ever actually worked.
Yeah, that's why you want it secured in the first place.
Exactly. So if you're banking on, we could just remote wipe it if it gets stolen, not necessarily. Because if it never connects back to the internet, remote wiping won't work.
No. So I know that when my phone was stolen and I, immediately activated the remote wipe and all those things and finally just deleted it from my inventory or my tracking software, because it never came back in so that it could wipe.
Yep.
And I did the same thing for my friend's laptop, which was in the safe that was also in his luggage. So for the most part, yes, you should have the capability of doing it because you want to do it in case they do try to turn it on. You want it to wipe. Plus, what if remote wiping really comes into play, though, when you got BYOD in place?
Yeah. So,
and it's not stolen, the employees left or quit or just stopped showing up.
Or even if it's a company owned and you fire somebody and they're, haven't turned the phone back in yet. Those types of things. And that leads us to the very last one, which is hugely important. Inventory tracking. That should include all mobile devices, whether they're owned by the enterprise or even personally owned devices. Like Donna said, BYOD. Devices being taken out of service should be properly destroyed in such a way that data is completely unrecoverable. Now, this is a tough one because you've got devices floating around. Sometimes they belong to somebody else. Sometimes they don't. And you've got to make sure those things get handled properly. What if I'm an employee and I think, oh, Saturday, I'm going to go get me a new phone and they got an awesome trade-in deal.
Yeah.
Not good.
Mm-hmm. And so that just needs to be part of your BYOD policy, which it does mention.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, the inventory thing, we always say, well, IT takes care of that. David Sims, do you track employee-owned devices?
Absolutely not.
Do you track enterprise-owned phones and tablets?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So there you go. IT doesn't always take care of that.
Nope. I can tell you where they might be when you ask, but I'm not tracking them. Like I'm not geofencing your devices. And it's not that I can't do all these things, it's that people don't want to pay for it.
Right.
So that's the thing, because you can talk to an IT person and they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, I can do this stuff. And we can. But typically the user is like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's going to cost me $10 more a month. I ain't doing that.
Well, yeah, and that's where it comes in. So you don't understand this, and you hand it over to your IT folks, and they say, yeah, we can do this, but that's another $10 per month per device, and you've got 50 devices, blah, 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 you know, and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
And how do you get that middle ground and all of that? That gets back to what we started with about, yeah, technical people understand this, but having that discussion, somebody has to be able to have that discussion with management and users and financial and all those other things. So, yes, this has some helpful stuff in it, but it's a checklist of things that should be discussed.
Yeah. But, you know, I know we've kind of poo-pooed on some of this stuff, but you do need to do something with mobile device security. Don't just look at this and go, oh, we can't do any of this, or, you know, we can't even do, but we can only do some of it, so we can't do all of it, we won't do any of it.
That's not acceptable.
Either. Right. Don't do any of that either. Mobile device security is extremely important. Do as many of these as you can do. And then go from there.
We're not saying don't do them. We're saying we want people to be able to read it and know what to do. And this is not necessarily designed for that. This is designed for technical people to have a discussion.
Yeah. And just because IT tells you they have MDM or mobile device management, ask more questions, because sometimes mobile device management is simply being able to remotely wipe the device or remotely locate the device.
None of these like other things. Yeah.
Right. So you need to ask questions about what that entails.
So yes, I think we've followed the checklist of the checklist. We've done our checklist of the checklist for the mobile device checklist.
All right, cool. We're going to get mobile and get up out of here.
There you go.
All right, folks. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening. Remember to get those mobile devices secure. For Donna and myself, HIPAA is not about compliance, but it is about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.